Morning.
Morning. How was your run?
Nah, it didn't go.
But you're out of breath.
Yeah, but I did like 90% of going for a run.
What? So you didn't run 5 kilometers like you were aiming for?
No, like I did 90% of the task of going for a run. I got up early, got my running clothes on, put my running shoes on, filled my water bottle, had a quick banana for energy, went outside and came back inside out of breath. That's at least 90% of going for a run, and 9 out of 10 ain't bad. I call that a successful day. I'm going back to bed.
James, what are you talking about? Going for a run means you need to put one leg in front of the other with pace. You went outside and ate a banana. That's not going for a run.
It's most of it.
You didn't go for a run.
Then where did this 5-kilometer run medal come from?
That's a participation medal.
Yeah, I'm never going to win that marathon, am I?
James, madness is trying the same thing over and over again and expecting different results.
That's it. I need more bananas. That's like the only reason you'll run further than 5 kilometers. It's 1 banana, 1 kilometer, 2 banana, 2 kilometers.
How about banana pancakes?
Making banana pancakes. That's a deep cut, man. Good reference.
Just another time James was weird.
It happens rarely, but it happens.
It can happen. Welcome to the Get Commanded podcast. It's the GCP, brought to you by POG, Palms Off Gaming, sponsor of this podcast. I'm your host, the strongest man in Gundy Wallenup, Walt.
And hello, Commander players. I just walked into the room and forgot why I came in. James.
Happens to the best of us.
It's always, for me, it's always when I go to get socks from, like, I'll be, like, going out the front door and I'm not wearing socks inside. So I go back to my room to go get socks. I'll get into my room and go, oh, the fuck did I come in here? I need to go. And I go back to the front door and I went, fucking socks.
I do a very similar thing where I just pull my phone out and it's like to check something. Like I'm like checking the weather and I'll pull my phone out, see a notification, like check Instagram, check my Facebook DMs, do like 5 to 10 minutes worth of checking my phone, put it away and then go like, hold on.
There was a reason I pulled my phone out.
I need to know what temperature it's going to be today.
Look, before we get to the command for this week, I did just want to remind everyone that Theo's surgery GoFundMe, our amazing artist and my incredible boyfriend, is still live. The fundraiser is still live. Theo's actually confirmed their surgery date now, which is incredibly exciting. It's coming up very quickly, the 4th of June.
Oh my word, that's so soon.
It's very, very soon.
Wow.
So if you do feel very generous and do want to support some gender affirming care for my wonderful boyfriend, there is a link in the show notes.
Yeah.
Go give it a click. Read the wonderful description that they wrote about their life and what they want to do and all that kind of stuff. But yes, the GoFundMe is still live. Just wanted to put it out there and remind everyone that it's still there if they wanted to support.
We all love Theo and it's just a great thing to be able to support, honestly.
Yeah, 100%.
Awesome. And of course, we stream every Monday on Twitch as well. That's also a thing that happens.
We do it every Monday.
Every Monday.
At 7 p.m.
7 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. Daylight savings is over, despite my brain thinking it's not. Twitch.tv/getcommanded.
everywhere.
I know. I still feel like I'm catching up on like an hour of sleep, but maybe that's just life as an adult. Twitch.tv/getcommanded. We stream every Monday evening on Twitch, and then the videos are making their way to YouTube pretty regularly. Basically,
they're going up basically a week after, so they're live on YouTube the Monday morning before the stream in the evening. So it's pretty regular. But look, it's the best place to hang out with Walt and I. Obviously, the Discord's amazing, but the live chat recently has been amazing. Our last stream, we had like a hype train of subscribers going off.
That was awesome.
Which is great. And like, if you do want to support the podcast and get some like cool little perks on Twitch and stuff, that's a good place to support what we do.
Yeah, we're also just having so much fun with it.
Yeah,
like, there's a reason we've gone weekly with it, and it's just because we love doing it. So
we get to play Commander, but we get to do it for Get Commanded.
Yeah,
it's a bit of work.
Hang out with all of you.
Content for you guys. It's like the perfect dream job scenario.
It's absolutely awesome. But we do have an incoming transmission from the deep depths of the galaxy from the Space Commanders. It's time to get commanded.
A single mistake can lose a commander game. However, some of the most common mistakes in both deck building and piloting have simple solutions.
I fully agree.
Yeah.
That's like almost the whole premise of this podcast, firstly.
Yeah, I mean, basically, there's little mistakes that you're probably making, and they probably can be fixed reasonably easily.
Yeah, but I really like how they specifically said like a simple mistake can lose a game, like those huge consequences. It actually reminds me of a quote from Comedian, Comedian MTG, CDH coach, and makes some great CDH content on YouTube.
Yeah.
I think, I'm not sure if he's the one that said it originally, but I think a lot of people have this sentiment.
Sure.
That a perfect game of CDH will be decided by whoever makes the first mistake. And that stuck with me for a really long time.
Yeah.
Because you kind of get this idea of like, okay, well, if everyone's playing perfectly, it's like a game of chess, right? Like if everyone plays chess perfectly, the two opponents, it will end in a draw.
Yeah.
Because there's no winner. It was a perfect mate. You only win by your opponent making a mistake. So you can only lose by making a mistake, really.
I mean, basically, I think even in 60 card Magic, like I've certainly had experiences with like Pauper and even Limited where like you just play a spell in the wrong order. Like you play something when you could have played it the next turn and held up a like counter spell or held up like some sort of protection spell for your big threat. And yeah, certainly in Commander it happens all the time where you're like, man, there was a way that I could have survived this. Like even just the other night, I had some people over for Commander. I was playing Gandalf and I was like very close to winning because I had Mirror Works out and I was casting a Mere Battlesphere and I was going to copy Mere Battlesphere, and so I would have made... in fact, I did this. I made 16 Mir.
Oh, because you would have copied the Battlesphere and then copy the double that you would have had the ETB doubled, but there's
for
two.
Both of them.
That's a big play.
16 Mir, life totals were low, so it would have been like, okay, swing this Mir at you, just on the attack, do the Mir thing, kills you.
Blow you up.
Kill you, whatever. So Jordan was playing a like clones deck, and he cast Rite of Replication on my Mir Battlesphere. Kicked.
Oh.
And I was like, that will win you the game.
10 copies of New Battlesphere.
So I was like, I've
better.
just handed Jordan the game, like passed priority on it. It got to Jordan's turn, and I remember that the card I had open, I had 2 mana open, and I had this card in my hand, was Sajiri Shelter.
Oh, you could have given it protection.
Could have given it protection from blue.
You paid
Rite
for
of
the
Replication
costs, and then you didn't have that mana?
No. I had the mana open. I just straight up forgot I had this card in my hand. Okay. So it was a big mistake.
So it was like a proper full, like not even in hindsight mistake.
No, it was just like I just fully missed that.
And if you didn't miss it, you would have easily had that game.
I mean, Jordan won off my Mere Battlespheres.
It was your card that won the game,
exactly.
really.
Really, I won, if you think about it.
It's called vicarious winning.
Yeah, and we can all do it.
But like, how many games have people ended saying, if I had one more mana or one more turn, and if I only did that, or like if I had seen that, or if I had thought of this, or if I didn't do that thing, like if I didn't make that game action, I probably would have won.
If I didn't board wipe when the Dragons player had an empty board,
maybe
that game would have gone
and
really
then
different.
Passed immediately to the Dragons player.
Exactly.
Look, I guess that I do want to put a caveat here that we're obviously going to go through a list of like our big Commander no-nos, like stop doing this if you want to win kind of vibes. But I think the caveat is that unlike chess, in the chess example that I gave, Commander is a very complicated game with lots of variables. And one of those variables is hidden information, hindsight, and randomness. All of these kinds of things combine into things that are mistakes, but not ones that you would have necessarily, quote, made. Like, everyone has hindsight. Even blind people have hindsight. It's one of the beautiful things about it. But you can't always know exactly what your opponent has in hand. Or, you can make a good estimation, but sometimes they just had it.
Yeah.
You know?
I think it's really important to draw a line here between what you could reasonably have known and what you couldn't, which I think is what you're saying, which is this hindsight thing, right? Like, if at the end of the game you go like, oh man, if only I knew that James had specifically mana drain in hand and before I cast my 8-drop spell to give James 8 mana on his next turn, it's like, you can't ever know whether someone has a mana drain in their hand.
No, but you can make assessments about it.
You could say to yourself, look, James left 2 blue open and he's a control deck.
Yep.
I should have assumed there was a counterspell. That's a reasonable thing to go like, maybe I could have played my turn differently if I had kept that in mind. But if you were like, if only I'd known about mana drain, you can't be beating yourself up about that.
Yeah.
You can't know the cards that are in people's hands.
Yeah, and in saying that, like, there are, exceptions to this.
Yeah.
But there are things that I have been noticing, and I'm sure you've been noticing as well, Walt, that players are frequently doing that drastically reduce their chances of winning a game in both deck building and piloting, like the Space Commander said.
Yes.
And there are, like, really quick, simple solutions that, like, we could sum up in a sentence that can point players to the right way of going about that problem.
It's funny. I feel like this is almost going to be a little bit of a summary of some of the commands we've done in the past, right? Because I feel like sometimes some of these problems might be things we've looked at on a larger scale, like a macro scale, and like for a whole command, a whole transmission sometimes. But I think maybe we can just like blast through them and be like, these are just like the main ones we're still seeing a lot.
Yeah.
And here's how you fix them. Like, kind of summaries of the things that we've said to you before. But in a nice, neat package for you.
And I guess it's also like, there is obviously more nuance to this because we could, and some of these problems that we talk about might get their own episode in the future.
Definitely.
Because there is nuance to it. But like, I think the Space Commanders are saying, they said simple solutions. I think if we say very simple solutions to people instead of having an hour-long episode for each of these things, maybe people will start playing a little bit differently.
Yeah. Keen. Should we start with, because they kind of divided them pretty neatly into piloting mistakes and deck building mistakes. Should we just dive straight in with deck building?
I think that's a good start, because that's probably our favorite place to exist anyway.
And you do deck build before you pilot, to
exactly.
be fair.
We're going chronologically. Look, I think the first problem that I think people are encountering, Commander players are really encountering, is really problematic mana curves. And the problem there is that they are neglecting the mana curve in general.
I mean, we've definitely looked at this one in length before. I've so much of the time when I'm looking at someone's deck and someone's like, hey, I need some advice on something, I'm just like, cut these 5-6 meta spells. Yeah. Look, I think Commander is definitely getting faster and faster as a format,
quicker format. I mean, a lot of the more effective spells in Commander that are being printed for Commander are now falling at the lower end of the mana value scale.
It's kind of impossible for this not to happen, right? Like they very rarely print strictly worse cards.
Yeah, true.
Generally, the cards just get more and more powerful, and often,
unless they're reprinting a reserve list card and they're doing that trick.
It's true.
That's a whole other episode.
But there's a reason that there's ways they can improve on power. Sometimes it's like, okay, for the 4 mana 4/4 that you get in green now has this extra text on it. But the other thing they can do is go like, okay, this effect that used to be on a 5 mana 4/4 in green can now be on a 4 mana 4/4 in green.
And it has reach.
Yeah. Sometimes they do both. That's true.
I think that, like, recently we spoke about, like, big mana do-nothings and how, like, detrimental that can be to waste your whole turn casting Atali Primal Hunger.
Yeah.
And then passing the turn for it to be removed for you to untap with no progression of your board.
Yeah.
A lot of the time, this is referred to as spell economy as well. Like when I've been watching a lot of the Pro Tour commentary recently.
Oh, okay.
And it comes up in 1v1 quite a lot about how people, the quote is double spelling. That's like the word, the phrase you hear a lot of. So instead of doing this big mana do nothing 6 mana 6/6, a lot of decks are opting for like a 4 mana thing and a 2 mana thing.
Yeah.
So usually it's like 4 mana board progression and a 2 mana removal spell on your opponent.
Sure.
And that's better than just board progression. Do you know what I mean? Like you're going up. If you're balancing the equation, if your opponent is playing one creature and you're playing a removal spell and a creature, for the same amount of mana.
Yeah.
Your equation is higher. Like
Yeah.
the value on your side of the field is higher.
Yeah, it's a tricky thing because like I guess the other side of this coin would be card advantage, right? Where like the more cards you're spending, the less you have. But I think it's these days in Commander, card draw is so good that it's more important that you have the capacity to do multiple things on your turn than it is for like I think by the time you get to sort of turn 4 or 5, you should be double spelling in Commander. I think there are exceptions.
Not by turn 3 or 4.
Yeah,
really, yeah.
I mean, ideally, but like I think you could sort of go like on turn 1 you don't have to play something in Commander necessarily, but turn 2 play something, turn 3 play a 3-drop, and then turn 4 probably play a 4-drop or maybe like a 1-drop and a 3-drop. But turn 5, I reckon by then certainly it's pretty rare that these days that someone just like drops a 5-drop and this is their Commander. Usually it's like no, you want to like have this 4 mana thing that progresses your board and you Swords to Plowshares, or you want to like drop a Heuristic Study and then cast a Naturalize on someone's thing.
You think about it in context of your 3 other opponents, they're also going to be trying to do the same thing. They're going to try and progress their boards.
Yeah.
So their threat is going to come out around turn 5. So if you can drop your threat and a removal spell, that's just going to change the balance of the equation that is that spell economy at the table.
I think the other thing that happens with these like high mana value spells is they just sit in your hand for so much more of the game. Sometimes the whole game.
I mulligan a hand with 6 drops in it so goddamn quickly.
Yeah, it's just like if you have 1 6 mana, 1 5 mana spell in your hand, whatever. If you've got multiple, especially in your opening hand, as you say, like it just feels so bad being like I'm relying so much on the top of my deck to give me the cards I need. And also, if your deck is built with a really high mana curve, the top of the deck might not be helpful to you either. You might be drawing those 5-drops, drawing those 6-drops off the top as well. It's obviously a really delicate thing in Commander, especially in relation to ramp, where obviously you can justify very high mana curves. I mean, I've got an Averna, the Chaos Balloon deck.
That's nothing but ramp and big drops.
Yeah, the average mana value of that deck is like 4.3 or something absurd, but like there is 15 or 20 ramp spells in there. My Commander ramps me, you know, like...
And I guess that's a thing that people are overlooking with these high mana value decks is their mana curve at the lower end should all be dedicated to ramping you. Yeah. So you can get to those big end spells.
Definitely. Yeah. And also I think card draw. Card draw is so important. You got to hit your land drops if you're going to have a deck like that, definitely.
So what's our solution to these obscure mana curves? We want a simple solution. I think that if I was just to give like a general piece of advice for people that are building mana curves, would be go listen to our episode of mana curves. But also, when building the deck, imagine playing it in the perfect mana curve order. So like think about it as all my 1-drops are played on turn 1. How good are they?
Yeah.
All my 2-drops are played on turn 2. My 4-drops on turn 4, etc., etc. And you'll start seeing a story of how your deck progresses.
Yeah.
And I think that like if you're looking at your 2-drops and going, wow, all my 2-drops are ramp, then theoretically by turn 5 I can start playing 2 spells. And that makes my 5-drops a bit better because I'm also playing my 3-drops. And it just having that view or that lens, I guess you could call it, of looking at your mana curve in this way changes your approach to what you put in the 6 and 7 mana drop slot.
I think even just looking at the turn your Commander should come out. If nothing else you do look at except this thing, because like if you have a 4 mana Commander that wants to come out as soon as possible, you're in luck because there are a million 2 mana ramp spells that now mean you can cast your Commander on turn 3 every single time.
Yeah, this is something that really changed or revolutionized my approach to ramp and the curve of my ramp is what CMC my Commander is.
Yeah, it makes a huge... And when they want to come out. Like, so many of our Commanders want to be the first thing that comes out. And if that's the case, gosh, your like low mana value ramp matters so much more.
Yeah, so much more.
Definitely.
All right. Simple problem, simple solution.
That's like next thing. I feel like it's sort of similar. We're just talking about Commanders. I reckon people are running too many of these like lightning rod commanders. You know what I mean?
The ones that like are kill on sight commanders.
Yeah, just like commanders that everyone knows at this point will completely take over the game
Yeah.
and will just remove them immediately.
Yeah, I think these are usually, funnily enough, the higher mana value commanders. They usually sit in that kind of like 5 mana value and
Yeah.
up. They usually have very powerful, very game-winning effects. And something else that I find with these commanders is a lot of the time, the decks that are built around them, without them, the deck does absolutely nothing.
Oh, yeah, big time. I mean, it's usually kind of the nature of a commander of this mana value, right? Is it's like, this is your win con almost, or like, it's a late part of your engine, and so it's probably the thing that gets you over the line. I mean, I've got an Azor's Lawbringer deck.
6 mana.
6 mana. Admittedly, is not a huge lightning rod, because all he does is Sphinx's Revelation, really. There's not really any other meaningful text on that card.
He has an ETB, but once that's gone,
Once that's gone, he's just a 6/6 flyer that does Sphinx's Revelation. But people will still remove him, and yeah, you got to be careful about, especially high mana value commanders, but also just any of these commanders that just are the probably the classic like sort of glass cannon kind of thing. You know, like the deck is it's essential to the deck to have the commander. And if the commander is removed, the deck doesn't work anymore. And so, like, the commander might shoot you way into the lead. You know, I'm talking something like a Mirim Sentinel Worm.
Yeah,
these
something
dragon
that, like,
decks.
If you have it on field for a turn or two, it will win you the game.
Yeah.
Kind of powerful.
Really, really busted powerful. But yeah, it's a glass cannon. If someone removes that commander, then suddenly it's like you're not doing anything.
Yeah, like in a similar vein, like Gishath's Son's Avatar.
Yeah.
I've disassembled that deck because the play pattern that I had was like ramp, cast Gishath, swing, get an effect, or cast Gishath, it gets removed.
Yeah.
I have to wait, untap, recast Gishath, it gets removed, rinse and repeat that cycle. And it was miserable. Like, as a pilot, it's miserable to play.
Yeah.
Because you just are constantly targeted. And I think the effect that happens is one of the things that you have to do in Commander is when you sit down, you reveal your commander to everyone.
Yeah.
That's like a rule of Commander.
It's public knowledge.
It's public knowledge. It sits in the command zone face up. And if you sit down at a table and someone's playing like Joda, Archmage Eternal, where they can pay Wooburg and cast any spell from their hand.
Yeah.
That can't stay around.
No.
Because if they cast Joda on turn 4 and then untap with 5 perfect Wooburg mana on turn 5, you could be facing an Eldrazi Titan.
Yeah.
Or like an Omniscience, and then you're fucked.
Yeah, Like you kind of, as someone, I mean, we talked about hidden information before. Like, this is public information, but it also just tells you a lot about how the rest of this deck is built.
Yes.
Like, a Joda Archmage Eternal deck is full of the most powerful spells you can feasibly cast in Commander. Full stop.
And it becomes a 1v3 before the game has even started.
Yeah, it's just like we have to remove Joda or we lose.
Yeah, if you sit down and there is one person at the table, like everyone's playing like, you know, Walt's playing Catilda and Lear, Flashback Humans, and I'm playing like my weird Tornos deck that, you know, has a copy ability thing.
Yeah.
And then someone sits down with Joda, it's like, okay, I don't give a shit about Catilda and Lear.
No.
All my removal is going to be pointed at Joda.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're doing this more and more these days. Like, I know there's been a lot of discourse recently about Vohar, Jaws of the Conclave.
This is a commander you got to kill on side.
It's the 5 mana. It's Naya, so it's 2 red, green, white.
Has
like
Ward 2, Vigilance,
it might be
Trample.
Ward 3, I think. It's something silly.
Yeah.
But yeah, when it attacks, for each elf you control, you draw a card, and then for each wolf you control,
You put a +1 counter on each creature, I think?
it's something absurd like that.
It's busted.
It's
like,
absolutely
cracked.
busted powerful.
People are like building like CDH brews around it because the game can just end that quickly.
I can believe
with
it. I haven't seen a commander that just like murks people in combat like this since probably what's the one that they've started building stacks lists around for the
Jetmir.
Jetmir, yeah. I mean, Jetmir's
great.
just like better overrun in the command zone, admittedly. But yeah, this is a similar deck where it's just like, cool, I know that when that commander comes out, the game is not much longer in length.
So I got to remove it.
I got to remove it.
So our solution, our simple solution, I'm going to just advise you to put it in the 99. Like, it's pretty simple, but find a different commander that supports your strategy and have this lightning rod for removal commander as like a win condition. There's actually, I was looking the other day at dinosaur decks because I genuinely miss my Gishath Son's Avatar.
We still got a lot of the dinosaurs, I imagine, as well.
Yeah, I mean, like a few people bought them after
the new Ixalan.
The Ixalan set came out
makes
because
sense.
it was a strategic disassemble timing because I knew I'd be able to sell a lot.
It was a good time to move those cards.
But check this new commander out that I found that's Naya as well. It's Huatli, Poet of Unity.
Right.
For
Planeswalker?
No, it's a flip. It's a creature that flips into a saga.
Whoa.
And it's
Oh, I think I remember this card.
It's really cool. And like if you're a dinosaur deck, instead of running Gishath, which is just like I'm a point my like removal at Gishath, you can run a commander that's 2 and a green to cast. These are its abilities. Huatli enters the battlefield, search your library for a basic land card, reveal it, put it to your hand and shuffle.
Okay.
No one gives a shit about you doing that.
Nope.
Then you can pay 3 hybrid Boros, exile Huatli, and return it as the saga.
Yep.
The saga is Chapter 1, create 2 3/3 dinosaurs.
Cool.
Chapter 2, creatures gain, add Naya, so you can tap it and have Naya. So it basically becomes like a weird Cryptolith Rite for a hot second.
They add red, green, or white. I thought you were saying they add red, green, white, and I was
that's terrifying.
Yeah.
No, so creatures have tap for
they become
red,
mana
green, or
dogs.
white. Yeah. And then the third one is search your library for a dinosaur card, reveal it, put it to your hand, then shuffle. So it's a tutor.
Okay.
That's a pretty good.
Sick.
And then 4th chapter, dinosaurs you control gain double strike and trample until end of turn.
Whack.
So this card for 3 mana is great in the early game. It fixes you, it tutors you, it ramps you because it gets the mana dog thing activated. Late game, it's
a win con.
It's a win condition.
Sick.
And it's 3 mana.
That's awesome.
And it's got an ETB to get a basic land. No one gives a fuck about that.
No one's countering that spell, that's for sure.
So that's my advice. Like, take your lightning rod and put it in the 99 as a win condition and find something that is not going to draw heat, but still supports your strategy.
I think I'm going to, just extend that solution slightly and say, because I think you're right in saying the 99 is important here. The other thing you can do is have your 99 work without the commander.
Yeah.
If the commander is just something that's going to get removed all the time, focus all of your attention on making sure the rest of the deck functions without the commander at all.
Yeah.
And then the commander's just like a happy extra thing you sometimes get.
Yeah, when you goldfish, never cast your commander. See how the deck works.
See how the deck works. Because you're not going to keep a Gishath very long.
No,
I'll tell you that much.
All right, next problem. Moving on.
Yep.
I think that people in deck building are still building for Magical Christmas Land.
Yeah, this has been a bit of a recurring theme lately. I feel like we probably have been seeing this a lot in the people around us. I certainly know people who are more prone to this than others, for sure.
It's for those that are uninitiated, Magical Christmas Land is the place where dreams live. This is where pixies and elves run around and give you free candy. Santa Claus is always there, and you can always get presents. It's a fantastic place.
Santa Claus is tall. He wears a black suit. He's got buttons for eyes. You know, it's a really magical, lovely place.
Talking about Coraline. The fact that we left a beat there was perfect. Nice. But look, it never works. And for Magical Christmas Land in the context of deck building, it's when you're looking at a card and you go, wow, this card is amazing. And then you say the phrase, if this and that, and also I have this, then this card means I win.
Yeah. If Atali if I cast my Atali and I have the ability to give it haste, and I can
copy its ability with
and have multiple combats, then I can win. And it's like, cool. Except most of the time you're going to pay 6 mana for Atali and wait a turn for someone to remove it, and if they don't, you'll get 1 thing.
Yeah.
From each player. Atali's fine, by the way. I feel like we're just absolutely
hated on Atali.
We're hating on Atali recently, but it's just it's just like a good stand-in card for this kind of thing. Like 6 mana and hope, you know?
If the thumbnail for this episode isn't us just beating Atali up, I'm disappointed.
Sure.
I also think that this Magical Christmas Land is not only a trap for new players, but I think it's a lofty goal for experienced players. It's like this. It's like a reoccurring trap that they've experienced players go, oh yeah, I've learned not to live in Magical Christmas Land. Then they get to a point where they're experienced and they go, I'm good enough now to try and get to Magical Christmas Land.
It becomes almost a challenge, right? It's like, I can make this card work.
Yes.
I can make the epic spells good.
Watch me break this card.
Yeah. But
spoiler alert, doesn't happen.
It doesn't work. I've tried this so many times. It's so hard to do this. I think the solution to this one's pretty easy, right? Just evaluate cards on their own merit and certainly on how much they contribute to the rest of the deck, and certainly how many cards in your deck synergize with it specifically.
Yeah.
The commander's always an exception here. If it synergizes with the commander, that's fine. Your commander is a card you always have access to, whatever.
Correct.
But if it doesn't synergize with the commander, it's like, okay, I need, 25, 30 cards in my deck that are going to synergize with this thing before it's good.
Yeah, I actually said something on a recent episode of the podcast, and you were like, "Oh, I didn't know you did that. That's a really good idea." When I'm evaluating cards, I usually put a card in my hand that I'm thinking about, and I will put the rest of the deck. I will shuffle it and put it to the side, and I will draw from the top of my library until I get a card that makes me go, "Wow, these 2 cards alone in combination are great."
Sure.
And if I draw 6 cards without finding something that I go, "Wow, that's great," I go,
I imagine you skip lands here.
Well, yeah,
we don't usually expect lands to synergize with stuff, but
I usually go
6 non-land cards, and not a single one of them synergizes with something. You'd be starting to go like, okay, the percentage of my deck that is not working with this card, because you could also just shuffle and do it again, right? You could just keep on doing this and be like, okay, every time it takes me 7 non-lands before I find something that synergizes.
This does something good.
Yeah, it's probably not worth it in the deck, right? Yeah. I like that solution a lot.
Yeah, it's a good little gold fishing tip, I guess.
Yeah, it's a very fast way of doing a very complicated thing, I think.
All right, last tip in deck building. I'm going to say that people still don't understand the rules of their own commander, and they build a deck around the commander without understanding how the rules of that card actually work.
Yeah, I see this a lot. I think it's the kind of thing where it's like, I get that not everyone gets obsessed with the rules like both me and James have at different times. James more so than me. Not everyone's going to know exactly what's a replacement effect and what's a trigger. That's fine. But certainly your commander, you need to understand exactly what your commander is doing, and what I think especially so many commanders these days are synergy pieces. Know which things your commander is synergizing with and which things it is not.
Well, the famous example is like the old Obeka, the one that ends the turn.
Oh, right? Yeah.
People really didn't understand until end of turn effects are not the same as gain control of it and at the beginning of the next end step, sacrifice or do this.
Yeah.
Because at the beginning of the next end step is a triggered ability that goes on the stack at the end step.
Yeah.
Whereas until end of turn is when the turn ends.
Yes.
So if you use Obeka to end the turn still ends. You do not keep the creature that you control, that you gained control of until end of turn.
Yeah.
Because now that's the end of the turn.
The people need to be much better at this. I'm going to say specifically because the rules reminder text for every end the turn spell, your, what's the artifact that does it as the same thing?
The perpetual timepiece? No,
I forget. Anyway, there's an artifact that taps and ends the turn. There's Overseer Obeka. Every single one of them has in the reminder text until end of turn effects end.
Yes.
They say it explicitly there.
So if all your creatures get +1/+1 till end of turn, turn ends.
That's done.
They lose.
That is done.
One of the new cards that I saw recently that people are starting to brew around and they don't understand how the rules work is this new Riku of Many Paths.
Oh.
It's Teamer. And I think it's literally blue, green, red, and it's about modal spells.
Right.
It's whenever you cast a modal spell, you choose X of its abilities for each time you chose a mode on the modal spell that you're casting. It's really, really cool. It has a bunch of different things. It puts +1 counters on stuff if you just Scryfold it.
Yeah, I have. Yeah, 3/3. Yeah, team as you say. Whenever you cast a modal spell, choose up to X, where X is the number of times you chose a mode for that spell.
Yeah.
Exile top card of your library till end of your next turn. You may play it. +1 counter on Riku against tramples end of turn, or make a 1/1 bird creature token with flying.
That is a sick commander.
That's really cool.
However, people are not understanding what modal spells are.
Yes.
People are playing spells that are not modal spells, but like
that say like choose on them.
Yes.
Right? Like choose any number of target things or whatever. It's like
that's not modal.
That's not modal.
Modal is where it says choose one of the below effects to play.
These days in templating, they are always dot pointed.
Yeah,
different things you can choose.
Gix's command is one of those.
So
all
choose
the command
two, and then it's just got dot point, dot point, dot point, dot point, dot point. These are your choices.
Yeah, Jeska's Will is a modal
Oh,
spell.
true. Yeah, choose one. Or if you control your command, choose both.
Choose both.
Yeah.
But people just aren't understanding the rules. And this is a huge problem because when you start playing a game of Commander and you're playing a deck that has incorrect synergies, you're already in the game. Your chances of winning plummet. And people will correct you. And I can guarantee you, Commander players that are obsessed with the rules aren't just going to let you play the deck as if the rules were different because the reason why the rules are that way is to keep that commander balanced.
Well, like for instance, the Riku thing, if someone's got a spell that says choose any number of targets or something, and they think that's a modal spell with 10 modes, for instance, they're going to do the Riku thing 10 times?
No. That's not how that works.
Absolutely not how you should be doing that.
Yeah.
Look, I when someone who, when I build a new deck, I will go to Scryfall and look at the rulings for all of the things. I mean, we're sort of jumping ahead to the solution here, but like my Gandalf the White deck, for instance, I went and read all the rulings.
Yep.
And then I asked a bunch of judge questions in the channel because I was like, in the channel of our Discord, the Ask a Judge channel, because I was just like, I need to understand what this is and isn't affecting. So for reference, Gandalf the White is a replacement effect for entering the battlefield and leaving the battlefield triggers of legendary permanents and artifacts.
Yeah, it says if a thing would do a thing, does it twice.
Yeah.
It doesn't say whenever a thing does it, do it again.
It's not a double trigger, and also importantly, it has to be a something that's triggering already for it to be doubled. So someone the other day was like, I was sacrificing something in my deck. Candy Trail.
Yeah.
Candy Trail is a food, and so you can pay 2 and tap it and gain 3 life. And someone was like, oh, when you sacrifice that, do you gain 6 life? And I was like, no, that's not a trigger. That's an activated ability of that thing.
And Gandalf replaces triggered abilities specifically.
But it's really important that you understand that because otherwise I'd be gaining twice as much life, for one. But there's like a lot of things I would be getting wrong all the time in that deck if I didn't understand that's how that card works.
But that's the solution, right?
I think so.
The simple solution is there is on Scryfall, it pulls the rulings that have been made by the senior judges from Gatherer into Scryfall. So you can read all of the rulings, and usually they're the ones that are frequently asked questions about the commander.
The amount of times I've been about to ask a question in the judge channel and gone, I'm just going to quickly check the rulings, and it's just there.
And
it's
says, got it's 2 cards specifically that interact with each other.
Yeah.
And the rulings will say, when Gandalf looks at this card, it does this.
Yeah.
And it's like, wow, I was asking questions specifically about that card. Yeah. It's there.
For reference, I think when cards come out, they also copy across a bunch of rulings from similar effects and just put them straight in as rulings immediately. Like, there doesn't have to be an official ruling of a judge at a tournament for a ruling to end up in there. They just go what questions are we going to get about this commander?
Preemptively frequently asked questions.
Put these 5 rulings in there.
Yeah.
Makes a huge difference.
And also, talk to judges. If you haven't already, join our Discord, links in the show notes. We have a judge channel, and we have the fantastic Ellie and Marcy that are just there all the time. I sometimes jump in because I've asked and they say that I know enough to help out sometimes. I never answer stuff I'm not 100% sure on. But just ask.
Yeah.
Genuinely get really used to it before you sit down and build, before you actually play that commander deck.
Yeah. Learn how it works.
Learn how it works.
And learn how to ask good questions. I think asking judges questions in an efficient way helps them so much with giving you the right answers. It's actually in our channel, the Ask a Judge channel, there's a pinned message specifically being here's the kind of question you should ask. Have a read of that.
To ask it.
Yeah, it makes a huge difference. I reckon that's all of the deck building stuff we want to talk about.
I mean, we solved 4 or 5 problems just then.
Well, we did, yeah.
Half an hour.
But we do have piloting still to go, so I reckon it might be time for a thrifty interlude.
Yeah, break. In between deck building and piloting, this is the point where you're taking a break from the hard intensive work. Consider this sleeving up your deck. You just sat there relaxing, sleeving up, and then you look at a card and go, wow, this card is really cheap. That should be featured on Thrifty Thursdays.
For some reason, my mind immediately thought you were going to go... I have no idea why my brain thought this. I did not have much sleep last night. I thought you were going to go for the fact that piloting is in the air, and you were between deck building and piloting, and I was like, oh, and of course, deck building is in the ground. And
so you're going to be a pot plant?
You're going to be You're going to grow from the soil in this thrifty interlude.
Walt clearly needs a thrifty interlude right now.
A reset. Look, we're going to hear a little something about a thrifty card. And as is tradition, I will be performing. And this week, it's the Cowled Merchant.
Oh, he's back.
He's back. The Cowled Merchant with some new wares. This episode's card is...
Midnight Clock. For 2 and a blue, you get an artifact that taps for blue. It also has pay 2 and a blue, tap it, put an hour count... No, sorry, 2 and a blue. Don't tap. You don't have to tap it. 2 and a blue. Put an hour counter on Midnight Clock. At the beginning of each upkeep, put an hour counter on Midnight Clock. And when the 12th hour counter is put on Midnight Clock, shuffle your hand and graveyard into your library and then draw 7 cards. Exile Midnight Clock.
Ever want to know the way in which your physical body and embodied psychological experiences relate to your trajectory through the universal space-time continuum? I'll phrase that differently. Ever want to know the time? You know what time it is now. It's time to start all over again, but this time you'll be cool. I really shouldn't promise that. Ding dong! It's time for this fairy tale to come to an end, so everything is going back to the way it was, which sadly includes your whole life so far, all of your friends, and your carriage mice. Carriage mice? Who writes this garbage? There's always time for a little song, and this song is a big clock, and it's not a song. Little song, big clock. That sounds like someone was trying to tell you an awful joke, forgot how to speak, and got their foot stuck in the edge of the sandpit when they were 8 years old in the middle of a hot day when he needed to go to the bathroom and no one would help him. It's a good thing all of this is made up, especially that last part. Get budgeted!
Further insights into that weird person's life. I was going to say human, but I'm actually not convinced.
I'm not sure.
No,
I'm not
I
certain.
don't think so.
It could be some kind of lizard-snake hybrid of some
Planeswalker
kind.
for sure.
Yeah,
No
yeah.
Planeswalks.
He's been everywhere.
Yeah,
man.
I've been everywhere,
Yeah,
man.
that's it.
I'm surprised that he didn't talk about the fact that the only way we can travel through time is forwards as a physics concept.
Well, maybe he's not moving through time forwards.
Maybe that's why he's so insane.
Yeah,
he's seen the future and he's coming back.
Seen everything.
Yeah.
If you enjoyed that,
I don't know why. Firstly,
if you enjoyed that, get help. No, you should go to the Queensbrook Commander Community Discord server, which is linked in the show notes. So we've mentioned it already on this episode. And there's a Thrifty Thursdays channel where I post one of those every Thursday.
Yeah. All right, let's move into some more mistakes, but this time piloting mistakes.
Yes.
When you're playing a game of Commander, stop doing these things because you're reducing your chance to win. And the first one, I'm going to get it out the way because I'm going to self-admit that I do this and I need to stop doing this.
Yeah.
And it's becoming the first threat / trying to win too early.
This is another one of those ones we've done a whole episode on. Specifically, we talked about the second threat
and how that's more likely to win.
You want to be the second threat, basically. Yeah. Look, I think that there are players that, like you who are really drawn to explosive starts and overwhelming board states. You want to drop a lot of mana rocks early. You want to cast really high impact spells really early in the game. But yes, the obvious downside to this is you are the first player that the other 3 players gang up on and try to stop.
You become arch enemy so quickly, and like it becomes a 1v3 in the same way that having a lightning rod removal commander before the game, it makes you 1v3.
Yeah,
this is like on turns 1 to 2, maybe 3, you just blow out so quickly. People are like, "Oh my god, we have to deal with you," and I think that. For me, it's like when I see an opening hand that has plays for the first 3 turns, I'm like, oh, this is great.
Yeah.
But then after the first 3 turns, I'm like, done? It's like...
Yeah, and the thing is, it's very hard to bargain when your cards are literally on the table.
Yeah, it's like...
You know what I mean? Like, if you have...
I'm not a threat, James. You have 18 permanents and it's turn 4. Like...
I mean, we saw this, like, just the other night when we were... Well, the other day we were playing a game with one of our patrons.
Bottomless Potamus. Yeah, that was a sick game,
That was a great game.
I really enjoyed that game.
You actually ended up winning this game, but there was a point where you had no cards in hand, but a bunch of things on your board that looked extremely threatening and were extremely threatening, to be fair.
I was very close to losing it. I became a threat really quickly, and I was very lucky that you guys couldn't kill me and I could just eke over the line.
And lucky that I died as well, I suspect, although that was largely due to my own mistakes, again.
True.
Look, I think it was the kind of thing where it's very hard. Like, if you have 7 cards in hand, but a pretty undeveloped board, it's pretty easy to downplay how threatening you are.
Yeah, you have no negotiation power at all.
Yeah, if everything's on the table, you
Yeah.
mean. No, you just can't do it.
Yeah, politicking becomes impossible because all 3 of your opponents are unanimously going, yes, he's the threat, kill him.
I can see the thing that kills me. It's right there. It's
Yes.
Kamal, Heart of Crosa.
Get him.
Get him now.
I don't have creature removal. Let's just kill James.
Yeah, we just got to kill James.
I think also, like, the whole trying to win too early, the term is the crackback, right? There's a reason why that term exists, and it's because of, like, if you... in 1v1, it's referred to as, like, when you send all your creatures in, turn them all sideways, and swing out for a lethal kill.
Yeah.
It doesn't work, because then on your opponent's turn, they have unblocked creatures attacking you.
Yeah.
So that's, like, the crackback.
Yeah.
So... don't do this.
Yeah.
Don't do this. The simple solution, in my mind, is using the first 4 to 5 turns threat assessing. You should be the person that defines who the first threat is. Not be the first threat.
Sure.
Instead, be the person that goes, "Ooh, I think Walt is in the lead."
I see what you mean. I think there's sort of a way of doing this where you also get to develop as well, right? Like, it's sort of like developing in a way that isn't immediately obvious what you're doing. There's a really easy way of doing this, which is just to, like, not drop the really obviously game-winning threats early, right? Like, you know, in my my Barbala Saga deck, this is like sort of an aristocracy way it normally wins.
Yeah.
I am typically not dropping my Marionette Master until there's a turn in which I'm sacrificing 3 to 4 artifacts at least, right? Because
to get, like, a lot of value.
To get, like, to drain someone for 12 or 16 or something. Because, like, it's a 6-mana spell for 1, but also, like, people see that. It's like, okay, I'm at 12, I see 3 artifacts there, like, that just kills me, you know? You can drop, though, your Clue Maker and your Servo Maker and all of the things that set you up so that later you can drop the Marionette Master, right?
Yeah, develop small and prioritize removal in the early turns as well.
Be the one who's answering the first threat.
Yes, and, like, when we were talking about the mana curve as well, like, your removal should sit in this low mana curve so you can respond to the first threat. You can be the person that goes, hey, Walt's got a thing on the board that if we leave it alone, it's going to be bad.
Yeah.
I'm pointing it out, and hey, look, I'm also removing it. Aren't I great for the table? Yeah.
Win some political points at the table.
Make some friends.
Makes sense. How to make friends and influence people.
Yeah.
Nice.
Just be a kind person.
Yeah.
It's actually quite simple.
Yeah. I wish it was. Next problem, I feel like I fall on one end of this and maybe you fall on the other. I think you can talk too much or too little.
Oh, yeah, no, I see what you're saying. These are 2 separate problems, but they fall in the same camp because there is a sweet spot for how much politicking you should be doing at the table.
Definitely.
Because if you fall too far on either side, it can reduce your chances of winning because, like, for example, I mean, I think I talk too much.
Yeah.
I think I said this in our admission episode.
Oh,
that
sure.
we did.
You felt like you're over politic.
Yeah, and I'm trying to simple it down. Like, as a result, if you talk too much at the table and you're, like, pushing deals on people, it draws a lot of attention to you.
Yeah.
And you become identified as a person that's, like, you know, politicking. I mean, the word politics is kind of filled with this
loaded.
sleazy kind of vibe.
Yeah,
So just by the act of engaging with it, you kind of start drawing attention to you as this sleazy kind of untrustworthy character.
It also just like if you start proposing a deal, it just forces everyone to look at your board, right?
And go,
like,
why are you making this deal?
Yeah, or even just going like, oh, okay, I see the deal you're making because you're also about to win.
Yeah,
you know.
I think it also. Talking too much, I think, is one of the things that impacts the future games of Commander you'll play. I've done, like, multiple games where I've played with the same pod at the same venue for, like, 3 games in a row.
Yeah.
And the first game really sets the tone for how the pod will treat you. And if you come out the gate, like, wheeling and dealing and shooting down and, like, maybe even doing some backstabbing and stuff like that. In the second and third game, people will just not want to deal with you.
No.
And they'll deal with you instead.
Yeah.
They'll just like send their removal at you, ignore what you're saying, and just kill you.
And in terms of like a play group, like these patterns over a long period of time can mean that someone tries to make a political deal, and if there's someone who makes political deals a lot, there's an immediate suspicion, right?
Yeah.
Like, why do you want that? What do you want from me? Yeah. What do you really want here? You know,
I don't trust you.
Yeah, and it almost like flips the thing. Like usually politics is supposed to get you, small incremental advantages. And instead, sometimes you end up going the other way.
Yeah.
Look, I think I fall at the other end of the spectrum. I think I talk too little. I think I'm too hesitant to engage in politics.
So what does that result in?
I think that it means that you miss deals a lot.
Yeah.
Like someone is politicking about you and you don't sort of input, and so like you kind of always get the worst of a deal that you have no part in, right?
Because you didn't put input.
You didn't get anything. Yeah. Like you can't have a deal where you don't say anything. I think you just miss out on this resource of other people using their spells. Like, in CEDH you see this a lot. People sort of bully each other into using their removal and their counter spells before yours, so you get to keep all of yours for when you go for the win. But I think to a lesser extent you still see this in Casual Commander, where
for sure.
people can convince other people to deal with their problems for them, and it's like a amazing resource.
Imagine having a spell that you could pull out of thin air that says 0 mana, convince someone else to cast their Swords of Plowshares on someone else's thing.
Exile target card from target opponent's hand, exile target creature from target player's battlefield, 0 mana.
Yeah. 0 mana and 0 card.
Yeah.
There's not a card.
Yep, it's not a card.
It's not even a resource. It's your words.
You reach above your head and into the aether and go, well, how much? And then that happens.
That's the sound that you have to make when you politic as well.
That was the sound of the aether. That wasn't me.
Oh,
I was reaching it.
Sorry, I misunderstood. I was about to start politicking Commander by starting the deals with...
We should politic like that next time. Someone starts making a deal and me and you just lean forward and just go, it's funny you should say that because...
It just sounds like pigeons.
It sounds like you ever seen Galaxy Quest?
Yes.
It sounds a bit like the language that the weird, like very obvious, like Star Trek aliens talk. They're like sort of Spock looking. They're sort of almost Falcons or something.
Bizarre.
The way they talk to one another. Anyway,
okay. Weird simple solution that we have to come up with. This is a hard one, but it's like finding the sweet spot. So if you talk too much, talk less. Yeah. Like just start talking less. Like literally close your mouth.
Yeah.
And let... I think the thing that I've started to do is I will let other people talk first and then see if I need to input.
Yeah.
Because I think the thing that I'm noticing is that sometimes other people will fight my battles for me.
Yeah.
Like I have had it before where like some people will be like, no, you shouldn't remove that thing because that thing's doing this for the table and all this kind of stuff. I'm like, yes, I agree.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Sometimes people reach a consensus that involves answering the thing you wanted answered anyway. And so it's like, I get to not only have my thing answered, but I wasn't in this deal, and so I have no stakes in it.
So I don't look like a bad guy.
No, and you don't look like a bad guy, and also like nobody's ever going to be like, oh, James did this deal with you earlier. It's like, no, James said nothing earlier, he wasn't involved. Yeah, I think in the same way, obviously, I need to talk a bit more. And I think
get your opinion heard.
Yeah, I think it's like about, especially when people start to politic about things that are relevant to you, just hop in. Just have a small thing of being like, maybe we should focus on this instead. Or like, that's interesting because I can offer you this. just little ways
comment.
in. Yeah, just find your way in a little bit more often. And it's harder, but try to initiate deals more often. If you need something and you don't have the cards to answer it, I am so bad at just like talking to the table and being like, hey, my deck can't answer that. Can any of you guys answer that?
Yeah, it can be very confronting, and obviously there's some social anxiety that might be influencing it, but you're with your friends, you're with Commander players, you can do it. You can do it. I believe in you.
I believe in you too.
All right. Next problem. I think there is a huge problem currently going on within play groups that I'm playing in, and it's getting distracted at the Commander table.
I think this is just a problem for everybody.
Yeah. I mean, look, we live in a world where we have the world's entertainment at our fingertips, on our wrists, in our pockets. And like I'm specifically talking about like getting distracted by talking to people and the game's going on and you miss stuff. And this is like a huge problem, right? You miss your opportunity to respond. You'll miss a relevant stacks piece or protection piece that you play right into.
Yeah.
And like look, even if the pod lets you rewind a removal spell, so say if you cast like Swords to Plowshares and someone goes, no, actually, I just gave all my stuff hexproof.
Yeah.
So that can't happen.
Yeah.
You're still lowering your chances of winning because you've just revealed to the table that you've got a Swords to Plowshares.
Oh,
in
yeah.
hand.
And look, in certain pods as well, people will not let you walk things back. And certainly when you get towards higher power levels. And so, if someone controls an Elish Norn Mother of Machines and you cast your Reclamation Sage, and it's like cast and it's on the stack, then they might tell you after the ETB is on the stack, oh, by the way, that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
And there's no trigger here.
And yeah, you've then just spent 3 mana to do nothing.
Yeah. 3 mana, 2/2 elf.
Nice.
Nice one, Pauper.
Yeah.
Even in Pauper, you can do better than that. That's how fucking terrible that is.
Elf decks are much better in Pauper than that.
It's true.
I just think this is a big problem when specifically playing in game stores, because there are lots of things going on in game stores.
Yeah.
People are trying to talk to you, all this kind of stuff. Kitchen table, it's a little bit easier to kind of manage because
it's just a more focused environment, I would say.
Yeah.
Like there's 4 of you in the room usually. It's usually quieter. Yeah, there's a lot more on your side.
Yeah, I think very simple solution. Put the phone away.
Yep.
That's like one of the main distractions.
Yeah.
I've actually had a lot of people come up to me and volunteer their phone for the life counter because it means that they don't touch their phone.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
good one.
That's sick.
I like that. That's a good thought. I think also just be aware of when you need to be paying attention. Like if you are going to have a conversation with someone or you're going to do a trade with someone, like make it in a very particular time where you don't need to necessarily be focusing right now. In a perfect world, I also think you just shouldn't do this at all. Like just don't do trades during a game. Wait till after the game. Like it's fine to do then. But if you are going to do it, like do it when you're tapped out and you've just taken your turn. You know what I mean? Like you are fully F6'd, as they say.
F6,
from MTG Online. You're not doing anything to the game whatsoever. That's the time to do those things. Go away, get your snack, fill up your water bottle. Like whatever you need to do it then, and not during your turn or when you have priority or when you need to respond.
Yeah, and when you come back to the table, get a lay of the land. Ask what you missed.
Yeah.
Ask, like, while I was in the bathroom, what got played. I think something that you can actively do to help you notice stuff, because, like, sometimes you do just get distracted. Sometimes you're talking to someone else in the pod and you just miss a spell that's relevant.
Yeah.
Something that you can actively do is every turn cycle, aim to make one comment on a play. So, like, every turn cycle, and try and make it positive, just for the sake of the other players, but try and comment, like, say, like, oh, great card. I love that card. Or say, great timing. Or great threat assessment. Or something like, wow, that's really good in your deck.
Yeah.
Or just something like that. It makes, if you're aiming to do that, it makes you an actively engaged player.
Yeah.
And I think it creates, a better game of Commander. And it also creates an opportunity for what we just spoke about, to politic.
Yeah.
It just gives you like an in, and it gives you like this opportunity to threat assess with the table. And
wow, that card's great in your deck. Man, do we have to answer James right now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it brings other people into it as well. So if someone else is distracted by their phone and Walt plays like, Mimic Vat, I'm like, whoa, Mimic Vat, that's really good in Walt's deck. And then someone goes, sorry, what? I was just texting. What's going on? Mimic Vat. Oh yeah, that's really good in Walt's deck.
Yeah. It creates an environment where more things can happen. Yeah. I also think like being actively on the lookout for the cards that your opponents play. I have found so many cool cards just watching other people play Commander.
Yeah.
The amount of time someone resolves something and I'm like, wow, I've never seen that before and that is sick. And I look it up and it's $1 and I go like, oh, that's going to be on a Future Thrifty Thursday.
Straight into the Moxfield considering
yeah,
pile.
Straight up. There's so many cool cards being printed for Commander these days and none of us can keep up with all of them. So important to stay up to date. I think the next problem, I think people are still getting sequencing wrong.
Yeah, I think this is a skill thing, but it's a skill thing that is a pretty easy skill to learn and to actively embed in your gameplay.
It's just like, you just got to think about like the order. I think that we'll get to the solution in a sec. So obviously the thing that you lose out on when you do things in the wrong order, you often miss synergy.
Yeah.
You miss the value being fully extracted from everything that you do.
Well, you've built your deck in a particular way to get the most value from the cards you're playing.
Yeah.
That's the whole point of deck building.
Yeah.
Make one card better because you're playing it with these other ones.
Yeah.
the reason you built that deck is to extract the most value from it. And if you deploy things in the wrong order, you're missing out on what the deck can do.
Yeah, it can make a big difference in a long game where the things that you deploy early, if you have the capacity to deploy something that's a really great synergy piece in your deck early, the amount of value that might accrue over the course of a game might be so astronomical that that could be the thing that gets you there, you know?
Like Archmage Emeritus being cast before you storm off.
Yeah, totally. I mean, even, in my Barbarous Saga deck, I have this weird card, Fey Offering. In the beginning of your end step, or each end step, if you've cast both a creature spell and a non-creature spell this turn, you make a treasure, a food, and a clue.
Yeah, I remember that card. It's like a 3 it's from Modern Horizons, right?
Yeah.
Really
three mana enchantment. So many cards from Modern Horizons.
Art is gorgeous.
It's
That's
really
all
cool.
I remember from that card.
Really cool. But yeah, this is obviously a card that cares about your end step and what you've done in your turn. If you want to deploy this as early as you can, right?
Yeah.
There's not much point having 4 turns go by and then dropping a Fey Offering when there might be 2 turns left of the game.
Yeah.
You want this to be the first enchantment you drop, and then you 3 turns go by where you make a clue, a food, and a treasure every turn. The amount of value you're getting from those 3 things every turn is through the roof, right?
Astronomical. I also think that when you sequence wrong, you give your opponents a window where they can interact with you before your synergy starts actually being valuable to you.
Yeah.
So in that example, right, where you cast Fey Offering later than you should,
Yeah.
So in the Barbarous Saga example, they can see they've already gotten a few turns as an example of what your deck does. So when you cast that Fey Offering, people go, hold up. That's going to be really good if we leave that alone.
Yeah.
Could you imagine what that would have done if it came down 4 turns ago?
Yeah.
It gives them a window to go, okay, no, we need to answer this now.
Yeah, it's kind of like you've kind of revealed your hand a bit.
Yeah.
You've kind of been like, this is what kind of deck I'm playing, and here's the big threatening thing. Whereas, I agree. If you play it in the other order, you can kind of skip out on that. I also think people are still doing this wrong. It's such a small thing. Be careful with your mana. The order that you drop your lands in, but absolutely the order you tap your stuff in. The amount of times I've seen people get to the end of a turn and go oh wow, I can't cast that spell anymore because I've tapped all my blue sources and it's my Archmage Emeritus.
Or I want to leave open Archmage's Charm and I've left open blue, white.
Just organize your mana so that you have, to be honest, I tend to go colorless, monocolored, and then multicolored sources.
I do that, but in reverse. I have the multicolored sources on the left-hand side.
Oh, really?
To single color to colorless.
But I think
that's so odd.
Organize them, but organize them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The important thing is you want to be using the colorless sources as soon as you can, because you can only use those to pay for generic costs or colorless costs.
Yeah.
Whereas your triomes are great lands to leave open because you might have a Nature's Claim in your hand, but you might also have a
Swords to Plowshares.
Swords to Plowshares, and that
then you can remove a artifact or enchantment or a creature.
Yeah, Jetmir's Garden being untapped lets you cast both of those spells, but if you had an untapped forest, good luck. You can only cast Nature's Claim now.
Yeah,
makes a huge difference doing this properly.
So I guess the solution is plan your turn ahead of time.
Yeah.
I think this is a really key thing. And I've seen so many players just put their hand face down on the table and wait for it to be their turn. And then they start planning after their draw step.
Yeah.
I'm like, no, don't do that.
Yeah.
Because then you're making a plan and playing on the fly. That's like building the airplane and flying it all at the same time.
Yeah.
It's not going to work out the way you want it to. And I think, just for general advice with sequencing, if you are planning on drawing cards in your turn, draw them first.
Yeah, you don't want to be casting your Harmonize, drawing 3, and then being like, oh, if I'd known I was going to draw that, I would have definitely played this Scoot Swarm at the start of my turn before I played my lands and did my ramp spell.
See? Very, very good example of sequencing, all in mono green.
Yeah.
I untap, upkeep, draw. I play my land, and then I go, oh, I'll play this other spell, this maybe Zendikar, whatever, ignorant, and then I'm going to use the rest of my mana to draw 3 cards. Oh wait, I just drew a Scoot Swarm, and I had a Cultivate in my hand as well.
Yeah.
That turn would have been way better if I did that.
Yeah, if you started with Harmonize, then dropped Scoot Swarm, then played Land and Cultivate, that turn looks dramatically different than the one that we just had.
So much better.
And I think as well, in terms of mana, again, play your tapped lands first.
Yeah.
Play those scry lands, those bounce lands, those bounce lands are harder, but
Surveil lands.
Play those surveil lands, play those triomes as soon as you can, because the amount of colors of mana they'll give you access to later in the game is just going to be so important.
Yeah, and also play the most threatening thing last.
Yeah,
because this gives you that whole thing of like your opponents see the window. The synergy pieces, the example in Babala Saga that I gave before. But if you have like a bomb threat and you've planned your turn ahead and you can do all this kind of stuff, I would bait out any kind of interaction or counter spells with like the less threatening stuff. You're really good at doing this, where you like plan out and you leave like 6 mana open over there, and you like do all the little stuff. It's like tireless tracker and then this kind of stuff, and you're like, oh yeah, okay, Walt's doing some stuff. Maybe I'll get rid of that tireless tracker before he does anything busted with it, and then you're like, glad to see that's out of your hand.
Rampaging
this
Baylords.
thing,
No, it's to be honest, I've developed that skill from playing against you a lot. And having you remove my good stuff so much of the time.
I feel like we're just in a perpetual arms race of how we play against each other.
Yeah, it's true. We're like constantly adjusting our game plans to like, how can I get the wool over James's eyes today?
Yeah.
I think the maybe the last problem we look at here, not knowing your lines or your outs in a deck is like a real problem where you just kind of miss how you could have gotten out of something or won sometimes.
Yeah,
how you could have won.
line to winning.
Yeah.
I think this is interesting because this is like it's a piloting issue because the problem is when you're playing, you're like, I don't know what I can do here, so I'm just going to make mistakes. And like, then it's the thing of like, when you get to the end of the game, you're like, in hindsight, shouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
But this is a thing that happens before you play, right? Because like
it kind of sits between deck building and piloting, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like the thing that like how much do you know of the deck you built in terms of how you then pilot
it,
right?
Because I think when you're playing, like the biggest noticing thing for me when I see players that don't know their outs specifically is they don't know their removal spells.
Yeah.
They just can't remember what they put into this deck. It's like, oh, do I have a swords in this deck?
Yeah.
Do I have this board wipe? Do I have that? Because this makes sequencing what we just talked about harder. Like if you're trying to draw into your board wipe, you need to remember how much mana that board wipe is.
Oh, it can make a huge difference here. Like, if you're in red and your board wipe is a volcanic torrent, you need to leave 5 mana open to cast that volcanic torrent, right? So when you're drawing cards, you know you can't go beyond having less than 5 mana. But if you know you have a blasphemous act in your deck,
keep digging until you find that one
digging.
red.
Yeah, you might be the kind of board where you can cast it for a single red mana and it answers everything, and it's like you can just keep drawing cards. If you've got clues, if you've got blood, you can just keep on digging until you find that blasphemous act.
Yeah, and I think that like if you've built your deck right, you should have alternate win cons in your deck. And this is less about finding outs, this is more about your lines to winning.
Yeah.
So if you've built your deck right, which you can go into all of our other advice to find out how to build your deck right, but there should be a point in the game where if you notice that you can't, let's say for example your win con is combat damage. You go wide and do overrun.
Yep.
And then there's a life gain player at the table and they're somehow on 390 life.
Yeah.
You're like, well, I don't think I can kill them. With this. So what are my outs?
Yeah.
What are my ways of winning that don't include combat damage? How do I pivot into that strategy? How do I alter my playstyle? And if you don't know those cards that change your playstyle into something else, you're not going to win.
No.
You're just straight up not going to win.
You're not going to know the way that you get to the win, and so consequently, you're not going to be able to aim for it. So yeah, you might know, for instance, that in your deck, if you do know your outs, that you have the ability to make your commander really huge.
Yes.
And unblockable with something like, what's the 1-mana blue enchantment, unblockable scry one? Aqueous Form.
Aqueous Form.
You might have an Aqueous Form in your deck, and your commander might have 6 power, and they might be at 12 commander damage already. It's like, cool, if I get an Aqueous Form, couple of +1 counters on here, I can win in a turn.
Or you're in like a proliferate strategy and you included a couple of sneaky infect cards in there.
Now infect a valid win
Go
con.
find that.
Yeah, you might have an Altar of Dementia in your deck. You might have the ability to mill them
sacrifice
out.
all of those tokens and mill them out.
Yeah, but as you say, you need to know that that's something you can pivot into to know how you're going to plan for it. So yeah, for instance, if it's Altar of Dementia is your out now, you probably don't want to attack with your creatures because you need all of them.
Yeah, you need as many to keep as
to the Altar of Dementia. It makes such a huge difference. And I think the solution here is something we've been a bit more hot on recently than we had previously. You got to goldfish your deck.
Playtest the absolute hell out of that thing.
It's so important.
And like, we haven't specifically done an episode on this yet, so maybe in the future the Space Commanders might ask us to revisit this topic.
So, yeah.
But for a thing we can point you towards, Command Zone just did a great video a couple of weeks ago about how to goldfish, and I really enjoyed it. I learned a lot from it.
Yeah, me too.
Really strongly recommend.
Yeah.
Just before we move on, though, there is one more problem that not knowing your deck and not knowing your outs and not goldfishing makes. People hate you because you spend 30 minutes trying to figure out what your turn is.
Yeah, it's true. It's such a problem, right? Like, it's the kind of thing that can be so easily solved by goldfishing.
Just
where
goldfish.
It's like if you know how your win will look, like you can look for it. So like for instance, like, you know, I was playing Gandalf the White the other day, and my Gandalf the White deck has an Oswald Fiddlebender in there.
Yes.
And like just knowing what your Oswald Fiddlebender like climbing is. So for reference, Oswald's the one where you sacrifice an artifact, you get an artifact with mana value equal to the sacrifice artifact's mana value +1. So you're always going
for artifacts.
Yeah, you're always going up the chain.
Yeah.
It's so important you know what your 6 drops are and what your 7 drops are. Because, like, yeah, it got to a point where, you know, you removed my trading post and I really needed a sack outlet for artifacts. But the way that the trading post got removed is it got shuffled into my library. And I was like, well, actually, I could cast this 3 mana artifact in my hand.
Sack it to Oswald.
Go get the trading post again. Like, that's a really simple one. But even just knowing, you know, what your 5s are, what your 6s are, means that when you get to a certain point in the game and go like, okay, I feel like I'm close to a win, I need to find it, you'll just know what that tutor is for. And that saves so much time in a pod. How bad is it when someone...
the pod appreciates you for knowing your Oswald
Oh my god. Yeah. I mean, when someone casts like a demonic tutor and they don't know what they're looking for, it's like, well, I hate to break it to you, every card in your deck is an option for that demonic tutor.
You want a basic land, you can get it. And if you take 5 more minutes, I'm going to put the basic land in your hand, and that's what you DT'd for. You just Sylvan Scryed in black for a basic. Yeah. Take 5 more minutes. I'll show you what you can do. Fail to find. Hurry the fuck up.
Big time.
Look, we all make mistakes, and that's okay. But it's not, because sometimes we make mistakes and it can lose us the game. But that's okay. Because with some simple, even sometimes obvious, altering of our actions or attitudes, we can avoid making these mistakes in the future. We can learn from our mistakes, and that makes us better Commander players and have better games. So, Space Commanders, command received. Like it. It's basically like Get Commanded's top 10. Stop doing this if you want to win.
I think these are like some of the things we're most focused on lately, though, in terms of improving as a player. So,
like a summary of our last couple of months of researching Commander players.
There's lots of good stuff in there, I reckon. So to the listeners out there, do you feel commanded, and what do you think the biggest mistake you can make is? Like, what's that thing that you can do that will always lose you the game?
Mine is not leaving 2 blue open. Look, you can tell us all of these mistakes and give us examples of mistakes you've made on all the social platforms of your choice, at Get Commanded, everywhere. Or the best place to talk to us is live, like we said at the start of this episode, at twitch.tv/getcommanded. You can jump in the chat, tell us that we're making mistakes or we're not following our own advice.
Yeah, this tutor's taken you 10 minutes to resolve. Well, come on.
Or you can leave it in the comments section on the YouTube channel where they're all uploaded 1 week later.
Definitely. And we would be lost without our patrons. Patreon is the absolute best way to support the Get Commanded podcast. It's linked in the show notes. There's lots of really great offerings for you, like playing with us, like we mentioned earlier. We'd like to thank our patrons, Fuzzy, Bottomless Potamus, and Dyer, and an extra special shout out to Fletcher Cutting and Wizard Down Under, who support us in the Space Commander tier. You're the best.
You are the best. And Pumps Off Gaming are also the best, because they're starting to make Magic the Gathering TikToks, I've noticed.
There was a really great one on Charizard the other day. It was like, I think
this is a silly card.
Yeah, it's like a silly card series, and he was like, this is how stupid Charizard is. And I commented and was like, yes.
It's dumb. And then I think I commented on from Get Commanded on their TikTok, being like, thank God it's not legal and banned in every format.
How funny. I messaged him and was like, here's the list of formats you can play Charizard in. And he was like, wait, wait, I don't understand. And I was like, no, you do understand. It's 0. You
None
can't
of them,
play it
yeah.
in any format.
So Get Commanded have properly influenced the Palms Off Gaming crew to get into Magic, which we're stoked about.
Definitely.
And you can get all of their amazing sleeves and deck boxes and binders and merch, which is pretty cool, over at palmsoffgaming.com.au / Get Commanded. If you use that link, you get 10% off your purchase and you support us at the same time. So go to palmsoffgaming.com.au / Get Commanded.
You got to do it. We need to planeswalk.
Yeah, something different outside of Commando. I think it's your week.
It is my week.
I know you've been playing a certain video game obsessively. Are we going to talk about that?
You know what's funny is I put this in the script to talk about it in the Planeswalk, and then was like, no, I talked about this last week, and I was like, no, I didn't talk about it last week. I finished recording with James and was like, James, you have to watch me play this game.
And I played it for a good 20 minutes while we were just sat. We were sat like in front in the same chairs that we record the podcast in. We were just playing this video game.
It's Spider-Man Remastered. I know I'm like 3 years again behind the hype train.
We're all expecting it at this point.
Yeah, it's
one
kind of
day you'll come out and be like, "Hey, Call of Duty Black Ops 1 was so good."
You guys heard of this new game mode they introduced in Call of Duty? It's called Zombies.
Yeah. Have you guys? There's this great game. Have you ever played Pong?
Yeah.
Tetris?
I found this cool new plumber. His name's Mario. Anyway, this cool new plumber is a hell of a way to introduce
Cool
Mario.
New plumber. What a summary of the game.
Yeah.
It's a plumbing game.
It's a plumbing Vorthos. I don't know. Anyway, Spider-Man Remastered. I got it for my birthday. It was a present from my family. I have been chasing for a little while just like one game that's kind of like a high-end, like sort of premium entry from the last 4 or 5 years because I built my new computer and I sort of felt like I hadn't really put it to the test yet outside of extremely modded Skyrim.
Which, to be fair, bit of a test.
The modded Skyrim actually pushed it to the limit more than Spider-Man Remastered did. It was operating at a very, very loud frequency with the fan spinning. But no, Spider-Man Remastered is so sick.
It's amazing.
I love open world games. I also love games that just have like a flow to them, like where the movement is something you can kind of master and get better at, and you sort of just feel fluid and like you just kind of can do anything if you learn the right tricks, you know?
Yeah, I've played a lot of the Spider-Man games over the years, and I hadn't actually played the news because I don't have. I've got an Xbox One, but it's a PlayStation exclusive. Spider-Man,
it was a PlayStation exclusive,
right?
and then the remastered, I think they released for PC, but I'm not sure if you can get it on Xbox. Yeah, probably not.
And like I never played it, and I never got to play it because I've got an Xbox. But oh my god, the web slinging thing is just, I mean, it took me like 5 minutes to get the hang of it, and then I was like doing backflips and like going around corners and stuff.
It's a real I was saying this to the other day, but it's really well done where it immediately gives you enough knowledge that you can web sling successfully and feel the fun of just web slinging through New York, but then you can get better and better at it, so there's more and more things you can learn to do. So I've just recently learned to like start free falling more, because then when you web sling, you like keep the momentum you had
like
because
a bit
you were
of speed
falling.
boost.
Yeah. So there's like little stuff you can do like that. I learned how to do like, you can like spring to a point, and then if you hit A at the right time, you like leap off and gain speed. And so I've gotten like way faster, and it's
cool. We literally last week we finished recording and we just sat down for like 20 minutes, half an hour, and we did no missions.
Nope.
We just swung around New York and just were like, how cool is this?
Yeah. I think I've done like, maybe 10% of the actual story, but there's like collectible things around the map and like little things you can do. I've done like 80% of the collectibles because I'm just like
exploring everywhere.
Yeah, just like web slinging, and then like half the time if you're in a district that you haven't done all of the crimes for, there'll be like a crime that comes over like the police radio, and so you just go and fight a crime, then you go get a collectible, a new crime comes over the radio, you go fight that. I was up so late last night. It's just so easy to be like, I'll just do one more thing.
That's why Walt's been slightly unhinged this episode and a bit distracted because he fell
more unhinged than usual.
What time did you go to bed last night?
Like 4:10 or something. Look, admittedly, I was up till like 3, which is already very bad, and then I was messaging Electra, who was coming home from work, and she was like, well, now you have to be up when I get home, and I was like, okay, I guess I'll organize all the tokens in my commander decks.
Oh Lord, it is a great game. You should go play it.
Yeah, it was super sick. That's all we have time for, so we'll see you next Friday for another transmission from the Space Commanders.
Goodbye, Commander players.